Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Laura Murray. I'm the president of the National Museum of Language, and I'm very happy to welcome all of you today to our very special presentation about working as a foreign language expert in the federal government of the United States. Um, Before we get to that presentation, I want to give you a little bit of information about the National Museum of Language. We are an independent, fully virtual museum. People hear about us, they always say, well, where are you? And well, we're online, so we're everywhere. It has a screen. Um, we have a very broad mission and interest in language. Um, it encompasses language learning, the use of language in society, which is really where today's presentation would fall, and preservation of languages. Many languages are going extinct due to lack of native speakers, but preservation of language is an issue, along with honoring and supporting linguistic and cultural diversity. So really across all languages. And we have speaker programs such as the event today. We also have online exhibits on our website. And if you haven't looked at the National Museum of Language website, I encourage you to do so. We have exhibits on many topics, ranging from international humor to children's stories, poetry, and many languages. Um, without further ado about the National Museum of Language, I do want to introduce our speakers today. We have two speakers. Eva Zeoli will be our first speaker. Eva uh, is the Foreign Language Education, Training, and Outreach Program Manager at the Office of the Directorate of National Intelligence, Foreign Language Group. And she is the lead for integration of foreign language education, training, and assessment across the U.S. intelligence community. She also leads the intelligence community's national K through 16 foreign language education campaign and outreach strategy. Previously, she managed the FBI Foreign Language Training Program for several years. She has a distinguished academic record. She's a graduate of the Harvard Graduate School of Education with a focus on technology and innovation education, from the French department at the University of Chicago, and from the Pedagogical University in Krakow, Poland. She also taught French at the University of Chicago, and she built a federally funded foreign language program for a K through 8 school district in rural New Hampshire, where she taught for 8 years. So it's quite a background. She has worked as well in the private sector. She worked in advanced concept development at Transparent Language Incorporated, which is a major language learning, you could say, program or business where you can learn more than 80 languages online. So I think I will stop there in talking about Ava. It could go a lot longer in talking about her record and experience. Now you want to hear them speak. Our other speaker is Jenny. Jenny is with the National Security Agency. She is the outreach and communication lead for the National Security Agency, and she engages with all levels of education from kindergarten to PhD students and faculty. And her portfolio also includes collaborating with the intelligence community to increase awareness of foreign language positions in the IC. She's been with NSA for 20 years, since 2004, and has worked as a Chinese language analyst. Uh, she was a language staffing lead in external hiring and recruitment, and associate director for New Hire Language Analysis Development Program. She's also been actively involved in the management of NSA's summer language program for college internships for 10 years, and has helped shape new language-focused high school and college students programs. She's a cum laude graduate from the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee with double major in international studies in Spanish, a minor in economics, and a certificate in Latin American studies, and has studied abroad for a semester in San Jose, Costa Rica, and a semester in Spain as well. So both of these folks have great records and careers in the language field, and they will have a lot of information to share with you. So at that, I think we will pivot to Ava to begin her presentation.
And just as a couple of administrative points before we go on to Eva, and I see that we have a lot of folks who have joined us this morning, so welcome to our presentation. You are welcome to be on video or not, depending on your comfort level. We do love to see everybody who's joining us, so feel free to be on video if you'd like. We do ask that folks mute themselves if they're not speaking to avoid any noise transfer. Also, we would love to take questions throughout the program. So if you have any questions, please do drop them into the meeting chat. And I understand both of our speakers, as natural pauses come up through the flow of their presentation, will be taking those questions as we go. So we'd love to hear from you, any questions or feedback. And with that, we will go ahead and transition over to Eva, and we'll go ahead and
here I am. Good morning, everybody. It's truly an honor to be here and to be invited to talk about my path to the IC and the broader question of foreign language education in the United States, and in particular the state of the education in foreign languages in the United States. As you can see, let's move to the next slide. Thank you. I was born in Kraków in Poland, and I grew up under communism. I came to the US in 1988, so still before the wall in Berlin fell. As a child, I always had to study languages, and it turns out that it became my passion for life. I started with Russian in the elementary school, throughout high school, all the way through high school. And then in high school, I picked up French, which became the passion of my life. All the historic connections between Poland and France, culture, art, architecture, everyday life, culture. I fell in love, and that became my career unexpectedly in the United States. I came here just after I graduated from the university in Kraków with the degree in second language acquisition and philology, Romance philology. Languages have been always a window to the world for me, having somewhat limited possibilities of traveling. It wasn't that easy from Poland in those days. I just started studying languages so I can learn about the world outside. And I developed that belief that once you learn a language to the level where you can communicate with people, read literature and newspapers, it really opens your mind and changes your perspective in relation to yourself, but in part and about other people. So coming from other places. So I became a true believer in that. On the side, I always liked technology and started experimenting how technology could help me and others learn languages. And finally, I always wanted to help people learn languages for those reasons that I mentioned. And even though I couldn't do it in Poland, when I came to the United States and finally graduated, spent too many years in school, in grad schools here, as many of us probably on this phone call, on this meeting webinar, I was given a chance to develop a foreign language program in the middle of nowhere in very rural New Hampshire. And that was, I think, the best experience I have ever had and the best use of my foreign language skills in this country. I taught everybody from K to 8 throughout 80 years. And I was given the chance to live within that very rural community. And that was really a really transformational experience for me, because up till now I was only in the academia, so to speak, environment. And suddenly I was in that rural environment where I could bring foreign language to those kids. So my passion and for teaching languages and opening those doors to everybody kind of realized here in the United States, not in Poland, but I'm very happy that it actually happened. My path to the community, to the intelligence community, was long, definitely longer than Jenny's. Because really I joined the intelligence community only about 10 plus years ago. And I never used my language in the intelligence community, but I used my second language acquisition skills and technology to help people learn languages. And that's where I am, where I was at the FBI, and that's what I do right now, at a little bit maybe higher level at the ODNI. Let's move to the next slide. So when I came to Washington from New Hampshire, my goal was to make a difference at the national level when it comes to foreign language education in this country. Very quickly, I realized that not everybody is studying languages, like practically almost everybody studies foreign language in European countries and elsewhere. So I realized that very often we hear that statement, oh, I don't need to study foreign language because everybody speaks English. So of course, being a little bit of a geek, so to speak, I did a little bit of research, and I found out that only 6% of people, of 8 billion people on this planet, speaks English. And only 75% globally of people, and 75% of people globally do not speak English at all. So 6% of English speakers is not much, especially when we talk about globalization and all the immigration, people immigrating from one country to another, and technological advances. That's not a huge number. In the United States alone, there are 350 languages spoken. That's a tremendous amount of languages spoken in this country. And 22% of kids under age of 18 speak language other than English at home. So that's also, it seems to me, a very high number of people who speak other languages, of kids who speak other languages than English at home. And 14% of the population in the United States was born in another country. So not everybody, the conclusion is, as you can see, not everybody speaks English. And we have this great base on which we can build foreign language capability and foreign language skills for the American nation. Let's move to the next slide.
Before we move on, we do have a question that's come in about culture shocks. Would you like to unmute yourself and ask the question?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Sure.
I just wanted to know if, like, in your journey learning these different languages, if there was like a particular culture shock or like notable memory where you were like, oh wow, like I didn't know that they did this and this is so different from like my own culture.
Mm-hmm. That's a very good question. Yes, definitely yes. And you might be surprised that my culture shock was here in the United States, which would seem as such a close culture, Western culture. And when I came to the US, I didn't speak any English. I never studied English. I studied many languages in Poland, but not English. And it was, I would say, when I came here, it was a multiple level of culture shock. Starting that everything was bigger, and finishing with the fact that the relation that I, I didn't know what the checkbook was. And suddenly I had to have an account in the bank and use checks. Uh, and finishing with the interpersonal contacts and the type of conversation you would have with people, which were very different, seemed at that time very different from what I experienced in Poland growing up with my friends, high school friends, and university friends. So, yes, cultural shock was huge. At some point, I liked to say in those days that I'm living on another planet. Probably the fact that I was in academia for quite a while, probably too long, didn't help. And only when I moved to rural New Hampshire, I kind of realized, okay, it's not that different. So yes, the cultural shock was enormous. Uh, when I spent a year in Paris studying at the Sorbonne, I survived a cultural shock over there, but it was time-wise shorter. Uh, so my husband likes to say, also I come from a culture where people express themselves very directly and spontaneously. And it took me a while, with help of my husband, to, as he would put it, round your edges. Uh, so I don't express myself so directly. I find it still very useful, however, I have to say, and helpful at many occasions. So yeah, definitely.
Thank you.
Yeah. So going back to my presentation, there is definitely, we've been experiencing here in the US, growing need for not only bilingual, but also multilingual workforce, and not just in the IC, but all across all sectors. Our major trading partners, like China, Mexico, Japan, Germany, and South Korea, their native language is not English. And you can only imagine if we send our business people to these countries and they can't communicate in their language, how many faux pas they commit, and how much business we are losing that way, and income. There is a study conducted by the New American Economy. It's maybe a little bit dated. The data goes all the way to 2016, but they analyzed job postings online that require foreign language skills, that are asking for foreign language skills. And there was a tremendous increase in those job postings that need those bilingual workforce. They more than doubled from 240,000 job posting in 2010 to 630,000 in 2015. And we can imagine that those numbers are only growing in 2023. Employers are increasingly looking for workforce with foreign languages. And not only in those high-skilled professions, but also in those professions that require that need a lower level of skills. There were huge increases in employers looking for multilingual workforce in jobs such as tax preparers, customer service representatives, or medical assistants. But also in so-called, if I can use that term, high prestige jobs like financial managers and editors, engineers, and any field you can imagine uh, uh, that you can imagine. Let's move to the next slide.
So I think we do have a question from Janice Antonek. Janice, if you wanted to ask your question.
Yeah.
Oh, I think actually she said she won't be able to unmute, so I'll go ahead and ask it for.
Okay.
Janice says, do NSA, Foreign Service, CIA, and other organizations still give written tests for employment in language positions? Do they give language proficiency tests? Do they offer ongoing language training for people once hired? And also, thank you for being here today.
The answer to all of the above is one big yes. All agencies, intelligence community agencies, they do test at various points, sometimes at the hiring moment level, when they hire people, sometimes they test along the stay at the agency anywhere from every 1 year to every 3 or 5 years, depending on the agency. And yes, there are incentive pays for those who reach a certain proficiency level as it is required by a particular agency.
And Janice has a follow-up question as to what proficiency level is expected.
So in general, for the IC, it varies based on the organizations, all the way from, I would say, 2 to 3 and above. ILR, interagency roundtable, 3 and above. But the general requirement is for all IC, interagency level 3, which is professional proficiency. And I will talk a little bit about that in my presentation as well later. I can continue? I can continue. So, okay, I answered that question. So, what languages are sought after in the industry, particularly Chinese, Spanish, and Arabic? Again, to give you some ideas about how that need grew. In terms of job listing in Spanish, those listings increased by 150% between 2010 and 2015. For Chinese, by 230%. For Arabic, 160%. And for French and Korean, those job posting increased more than doubled. Just to go through a little bit more of those, healthcare and the finances are very, very needy in terms of languages. From Actful Research report, 9 out of 10 US employers rely on employees with language skills other than English. Just to give us an idea a little bit more, 1 in 4 employers acknowledges losing business and business opportunities because they couldn't find speakers of other languages. Nationally, we lose about 2 billion each year because we can't conduct business in multiple languages. And employment for interpreters and translators is projected to grow by 20% by 2028. And not to mention that language services market size is also projected to grow quite substantially from 76 billion or 77 billion to almost 130 in 2032. So that need is definitely growing, and as documented by various research examples as I listed here. Let's move to the next one. And now what I like to call is the reality check. So where do we stand as a nation when it comes to this situation? Well, we definitely lack a consistent, articulated K-16 foreign language education. And we have every year fewer and fewer students majoring in foreign languages. Only about 20% of K-12 students study or have access to foreign language education in the US. Only 8% of college students study a foreign language, and only 1% of college students major in a foreign language. The latest Modern Language Association report on the foreign language enrollment in college level language courses demonstrates yet continuous decline by another 16% between 2016 and 2021, decline in student enrollments in foreign language studies in 2 and 4 years colleges. The 5 top languages cited in this report were Spanish, French, American Sign Language, Japanese, and German. As you can see in various newspapers around the country, more and more language departments and language courses are being cut in colleges and at the universities. The latest one that I was reading was in West Virginia. Only 11 states have a foreign language requirement in the US, and very often that requirement can be replaced by computer languages, which is not exactly the same, as you can imagine. Only 23% of US adults say that they know a foreign language, and only 7% say that they learned it in school. So what's happening on the other side of the pond? 65% of people in the European Union speak at least 2 languages, and 30% speaks more than 2. 86% of students in the European Union are enrolled in foreign language studies. Usually they start in the elementary school with 1 language, and the second language comes in the middle school. And just for comparison, in China, every single K-12 student study English, and in America, only 0.4% of American kids study Chinese. So that's where we are. That's our reality check. And that's why I start always my presentation with these statistics, even though I'm supposed to focus on the IC. I think that the problem is much larger. And unless we fixed the big picture through serious, deep cultural change, we are not going to solve any hiring issues that we have in the IC, in the private sector, in business, or anywhere else.
So I think we have a couple more questions that have come in. One is on use of AI in government jobs, and I think we're going to defer that one for a bit later when we're actually talking about government jobs. But we do have a follow-up question, which is Janice would love to hear some examples of kinds of jobs that require proficiency in at least one language other than English. So I assume not just government jobs, but generally in the job market, what kinds of jobs for which proficiency would be required.
Nurses, medical field, any job, any medical field. Lawyers, people who prepare taxes, multiple jobs, banking, positions starting with the bank tellers. As I mentioned earlier, the range is from the low-end jobs, customer service representatives. Of course, now we have AI, who is trying to answer our question. From my experience, usually unsatisfactory answers that we get. So yeah, technology is not going to solve those problems. Technology, to address that question, even in the IC, is very good with low levels, with dealing with language at those basic levels. But when it comes to higher levels of language and nuances and cultural references, technology, including AI, doesn't get it. Because all AI does is just follows the language patterns, which word most frequently follows which one. And that's what you are going to add in an answer. It's going to be the pattern search in terms of words following each other. It's not going to be a logical or a cultural sensitive response that you are going to get from technology, human language technology, or artificial intelligence, at least not yet. All right, I think we can move to the next slide, and let's just click 3 times or 4. So what is intelligence community? Well, usually everybody knows of CIA, NSA, Central Intelligence Agency, National Security Agency, maybe FBI. Well, it turns out that there are 18 intelligence organizations, or sometimes called elements. There are the basic ones in the top row, which I mentioned mostly, except for DIA, Defense Intelligence Agency. And then there are departments like Homeland Department, Homeland Security Department, Department of Treasury, and then there are military services, which all have an intelligence component. All these agencies are organizations, or organizations are within the executive branch, and they work both independently and together and collaboratively, together, and analyze intelligence information, data that is necessary to conduct foreign relations and to ensure our national security. So that's kind of a very broad overview. If you want to learn more about each of those agencies, just Google each one, and you will find all information that you need. Let's move to the next slide. So as I said, 18 intelligence organizations. Our mission is timely and insightful intelligence to support to inform national security decisions and protect our nation and our national interests. We are safeguarding our security, national security, and we are collecting all that information about our adversaries, and that information is critical for making decisions by our military commanders, but also by policymakers when we conduct our security-related activities. So now if we turn the slide and move to the ODNI, Office of the Director of National Intelligence, where I come from. So ODNI was created in 2005, and the head of the office is the Director of National Intelligence, Avril Haines, right now. And we basically oversee and facilitate the collaboration and the integration of what we work on across all these 18 organizations. We, as ODNI, oversees the intelligence mission and the activities. So we try to integrate our efforts. We try to share resources and people. In my case, in case of language training and assessment, we try to streamline training efforts, share training experiences. We try to standardize how we test. There are various research projects happening right now with the goal of standardizing language testing for the intelligence community, which hasn't been happening so far. That would have a lot of benefits for everybody, for all the employees in particular. The Director of National Intelligence is the principal advisor for the President and for the National Security Council on everything related to security. So that's where I come from. So we are not working we are one organization that oversees and works with the entire community of 18 elements. Let's move to the next slide. So why the IC needs multilingual workforce? Languages are used in various ways in the IC. And I always like to, especially when I speak to students, I like to kind of briefly mention to them that it's not just one intelligence type, that there are several intelligence types where languages are useful. And I listed here the main ones. So for example, at the CIA, Central Intelligence Agency, they have two focal points. They focus on the open source intelligence, meaning everything that is being published on the internet, YouTube, social media, Facebook, and newspapers, statements, speeches, to gather information and the sentiment of what's happening across the world in the open space. CIA also focuses on what I like to refer to as James Bond type of intelligence, meaning human source intelligence, where people need to have very high skills, level of proficiency in languages to interact with those with whom they work as human sources. There is National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, where they focus on imagery and collecting information from basically space through various electronic tools. For example, geographic places, names of people are very important. How do we transliterate them? In Chinese, very complicated topic. There is Defense Intelligence Agency that focuses on movements of, for example, military installations or troops to inform our military's next steps. And finally, there is National Security Agency, which conducts signals intelligence, SIGINT, and I will let Jenny to talk about it because she's the expert and I am not. So let's move to the next slide. So what is the language challenge then? All those types of intelligence that we gather and how we work with sources require high level of proficiency in languages. As I mentioned earlier, we need individuals with professional proficiency, ILR, Interagency Language Roundtable 3, in at least one modality. And by modality, I understand speaking or reading or listening, and not so much writing, although writing has been becoming more and more important, especially because of the social media trend. We in the intelligence community, we have hard time filling. We have a lot of job openings that require languages, but we cannot fill them. Why? Because we don't emphasize enough foreign language education in our K-16 educational system. And as we know, to reach that high professional proficiency, it's not easy when you start in college. It's very difficult. It's much easier when we start in the elementary school or even earlier and develop that bilingual skill, where at the age where kids are entirely receptive, like little sponges, and can easily learn two languages at the same time and develop natural native pronunciation and skills if they continue throughout middle, high school, and college. We need cultural experts who understand the nuances, history, literature, economics, science, who have those vocabularies. We need people who can interact seamlessly with another person from another country or another culture. So we don't commit those faux pas that are killing so many business deals, for example, or would be unacceptable when it comes to human. Technology, there was a question, very good question about technology. technology is working very hard. People are working very hard in the IC and in the private sector on developing technology tools. But technology is not going to solve that problem, because even AI, the way it is right now, and it's going to be for the next 10 years at least, if not more, technology will never get those nuances, meanings between the lines, cultural and historical references, how we speak about how people in one or another country speak about their enemies or their friends, what vocabularies they use, jargon. Technology will never be sensitive enough, since it's based on patterns, language patterns, to address that level, to have that level of insight. There are challenges, of course, with obtaining security clearances when you want to work for the intelligence community. Those challenges increase if you studied abroad or if you spend extended time in a foreign country. But they are not they are surmountable. It may take longer to get a clearance. The minimum clearance you would need will be secret for the intelligence work, but they are surmountable. And of course, we have challenges at the national level with our educational system, where not only we are not enough kids study foreign languages, but we don't have enough teachers to teach those languages, which means that our universities are not producing, or they don't have enough departments where they would train and prepare and educate and prepare foreign language teachers to do those jobs. The next slide. And I put this slide here because I think it's very important that in 2021 that all these issues have been recognized by President Biden. In 2021, he issued National Security Memorandum 3 on revitalizing America's foreign policy and national security workforce, institutions, and partnerships. It's probably about 20 pages document, and worthwhile reading because it talks about challenges that our workforce, government workforce, national security workforce faces. But among other things, that document, President Biden calls for, and I'm citing here, developing short and long-term plan to improve recruitment, development, and retention of personnel with critical skills, including foreign language skills and regional expertise. Of course, STEM, science, technology, economics, finances are also mentioned, but foreign languages and regional expertise have been mentioned at the same level, which I find very important in this large context that I've been talking about. So that national security memorandum led to creating national security workforce working groups. One of them has been focusing on a foreign language, starting with the current workforce and how to retain current workforce, how to train and develop, but also reaching out to the national foreign language education and addressing and trying to figure out, strategize, find solutions, and make recommendations for our national situation when it comes to foreign language education. Let's move to the next slide. So I would say if you read the newspapers, you know what languages are critical for our national security, but I would dare to say that all languages are critical. Not just those, languages that you could count on the hand, on fingers of two hands. all languages are equally critical. We work with at least probably around 200 languages in the intelligence community. And here on this slide, I just wanted to emphasize the level of proficiency. And those are literally citations from the Interagency Language Roundtable, ILR Level 3, Professional Working Proficiency, which corresponds to the European Framework C2. So we are seeking in the IC people able to speak the language with sufficient structural accuracy and vocabulary to participate effectively in most conversations on practical, social, and professional topics. We are seeking people who are able to understand the essentials of all speech in standard dialect, including technical discussions within a special field, and also people who are able to read within a normal range of speed and with almost complete comprehension comprehension, a variety of authentic prose material and on unfamiliar subjects. So it's quite high proficiency level that is needed to be effective in the intelligence community. Let's move to the next slide. Career opportunities. As Jenny would say, there are dozens of fields and probably hundreds of jobs where one can use language skills in the intelligence, starting with intelligence analysts. Even though they work primarily in English, it is definitely a plus and a huge advantage if they know foreign language. Regional cultural analysts, foreign language analysts, or language professionals. Languages are used in counterintelligence, counterterrorism, in law enforcement. I come from the FBI. I managed training for foreign language training for special agents for many years. And not only the ones who work here in the United States, but for special agents who are deployed overseas, all around the world. There is a intelligence organizations, several of them, they have language schools, very strong and effective language schools, and they are constantly seeking language instructors, language testers, test developers. There is a huge field of human language technology where computational linguists and linguists are sought after to develop those AI models and systems that help triage and huge amounts of data and information that we collect before we get any deeper. And of course, there is huge need for translation and interpreting. For example, at the FBI, we need court interpreters, State Department needs interpreting, very strong interpreting skills. And then there is, of course, a huge field of research, which I would say I kind of fall under a little bit, plus language training and assessment. So there are a lot of opportunities. It just takes applying and patience, a little bit of patience. Let's move to the next slide. Hiring requirements, and I know Jenny will be talking more about it, so I'm just going to go quickly through this. A person must be a US citizen, definitely. Must be 16 years of age and must be able to obtain security clearance. And what does that mean, security clearance? There is a background check conducted on a person who is applying, drug test. People may have to take a polygraph. You will have to report and your criminal record is going to be checked. Finances, bankruptcies and things like that. How do you present yourself on social media? Where do you post? What do you post? Allegiance to the United States? You will have some of those questions. Foreign influences. Do you have a lot of friends or family overseas in foreign countries? What type of relationships do you have? Alcohol consumption, yes. Drugs. Uh, Personal behavior. How do you conduct yourself? Your integrity. And of course, questions related about handling protected information. Those are all important. And at some point of your background check and your clearance process, you will find questions of that nature, which may feel a little bit invasive sometimes, but it's worthwhile. I can say, at least from my own experience, to be patient and wait. Let's move to the next slide. The benefits. There are a lot of benefits at all levels, professional benefits, work-life balance, as well as advancement, career advancement. You are definitely going to work in a challenging place with very intelligent and innovative people, which makes it interesting, at least from my perspective. In some agencies, you will have ample travel opportunities for various periods of time. You will be able to move between agencies like I did, temporarily or forever. You get relocation assistance, of course. For languages, most of the agencies has a bonus pay or incentive pay for languages, for your proficiency, for maintenance, or for use for the fact that you are using it on the job, and you will see it in your paycheck, every paycheck. And of course, healthcare and retirement benefits. There is a huge emphasis on work-life balance, especially for younger employees with families and kids. That is very precious. There is a generous leave program. Uh, you can't take your work home because most of it will be classified, which is great. For example, I exercise 3 hours per week on my work time during my work, and it counts as my work because my employer wants me to be healthy and happy, which I find very attractive. And of course, all sorts of wellness programs for the employees. In terms of career advancement, it's all up to you. How far you and high you want to go, how you apply yourself, your integrity. But one thing is certain, that if you want to continue to study and learn, you will have those opportunities. There are tuition reimbursement programs, various programs depending on the agencies. Again, so you can do your master's or even PhD and be at least partially reimbursed. Of course, it has to match or be within the frame of your job or where you want to go. There is professional training, so-called skills that you need to have for example, to be a language analyst, specific skills to that particular work. You will obtain that. You can cross-train from one language to another. You can learn another language. I know people who were sent for a year overseas to study a foreign language in school. And so there are, it's up to you how, again, what you want to do and how far you want to go. in your career. On the next slide, I included links if we have some students on the call. I included some links in this presentation, and I was told it's going to be posted on the internet. So you will be able to click to all sorts of programs, this slide and next slide, developed by various organizations, intelligence organizations, and also other governmental organizations such as Department of Education, where you can apply to obtain funding for your language studies, or you can apply for internships with where you are going to use your language skills. I'd like to make a point that it's not just language skills that the intelligence community is seeking. We are seeking employees who have expertise in one field, let's say economics or finances or science or technology, and advanced language skills. So when I speak to students in colleges, and this afternoon I'm going to be at the American University, I always tell students, have two majors or major and minor. Make your major in one field, psychology, and have your another major or minor in Arabic or in German or in French or in Hindi, any language. But those combinations are very important because if you reach that high proficiency level, you can actually go and read and understand an economic passage or article or a document or scientific document. It will be much easier for you. So those combinations of skills are very important for the intelligence community, and I'm sure for private sector business as well. So please feel free to explore. Let's move to the next slide.
Before we go on, I think Amy has raised her hand with a question. Amy, do you want to unmute yourself?
Hello, everyone, and thank you for all the amazing information you're sharing, Eva. So I'm saying Eva or Eva. I'm sorry.
Eva.
Eva. Okay. So I had a couple of questions. In all those agencies, which one out of the 5 languages that you brought up before is the one the most demanding? Like which one of those agencies, for example, is asking the most for French-speaking person?
I would say that everyone will be asking for French, considering what's happening in Africa nowadays from the geopolitical perspective. So everybody will be looking for French. The most sought after languages are, of course, Chinese. You can see it on the front page of New York Times every day. The same goes for Arabic and Persian. Again, front page New York Times, information, and Washington Post too. and of course, another one will be Russian. So all those languages that you read about in your local newspapers are sought after by all of those major secondary and also military components, elements, intelligence elements.
Okay, so thank you for the answer. That's very helpful. My second question was kind of related to what you mentioned before, where the agency had sent someone overseas to learn a language for a year. Does that happen as well with French and Arabic?
It depends. It depends on it does. It depends what's happening in the world, what our needs are, current and upcoming, as far as we can see. Yes,
Okay,
it
for
does.
example,
Yeah.
for example, I'm a potential candidate. You might be interested in me. I speak French, but my Arabic is so. That has it happened that you may be sending me in a Arabic country to improve my Arabic, so you can be using me for both of the language extended.
That's possible. That is certainly possible. Yes.
I see the opportunities. I am so excited. All right. Thank
And
you so much.
definitely keep studying your Arabic.
Yes. So we may talk, we may speak.
As we know, language is a lifelong pursuit. I'm still studying English and many other languages.
So Sorbonne is a fantastic place. I actually I'm gonna pass back the mic, but I am French, born and raised in French.
Okay.
Yeah, so we'll speak. Thank
Nice
you.
to meet you, Amy.
All right, and I see we have a question from Sahara as well. You want to unmute yourself?
Yes, thank you so much. So I just want to say thank you, Eva, for being here today. It's very informative, and thank you for the National Museum of Language as well. So as someone who is currently applying for language analyst roles with working proficiency in multiple languages, how do you best recommend I showcase my skills to be a strong candidate?
Well, you are going to be given a test, language test, most likely in reading and listening. So prepare yourself, practice, and get as high score as you can. That's the way for you to showcase. Also, for people who are planning to apply, I would, at the beginning of your resume, I would definitely mention my strengths, my assets, and definitely language is your huge asset. So make that statement that you want to use your language skill in your job, and language skill, cultural expertise, intercultural competence. Maybe give a little example and showcase that right up front. Don't keep it for the last part of your resume.
I'm going to jump in on that as well. For NSA, we have on our website, it's a build a resume form where you input your languages. So make sure all of your languages are listed, but then also highlight or mention how you learned them. Sometimes we see a ton of languages listed on somebody's application, and we're like, did you pass level 1 of Duolingo, or do you actually know this language, and how do you learn it? So that is really important too. And you can put some of that information in like a little cover letter. But yes, when you just list a million without saying anything or having that degree or some sort of thing, it's sometimes like, really, do you know all these? So, but if you grew up in that area and you traveled and you learned this and that, then okay, yep, you probably do know all those languages.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
So in the interest of time, I know we still have another whole presentation from Jenny to get to. So I will ask if folks, rather than raising their hands, can go ahead and drop questions into the chat. We'll probably save additional questions for Eva to the end, just because I want to make sure we can get through Jenny's presentation. So I appreciate your patience with that. So we'll turn it back over to Eva to finish up her slides.
I'm really done. Let's move to my second to last slide. There is this slide for StarTalk. StarTalk program actually collaborated with Center for Applied Linguistics to create a kind of guide, especially for for students who are looking and for teachers. There are those guides for how to search, how to get on the path of federal employment, so to speak. And so again, for you to explore. And my last slide is a couple of links where you can find more information on job opportunities, in particular on job opportunities and some student programs. And the last one is questions. And this is all I have, and I'm ready to answer questions after Jenny's presentation. Thank you. Thank you for listening.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Now I know that we would normally take a break, but since we're already well into our second hour, I think if it's all right with everyone, we will just go ahead and move right into Jenny's presentation. So Jenny, let me get you spotlighted here on the screen, and then I will go ahead and share your slides and we will get started.
Excellent. I'm a fast talker too, and I tried to pare down some of my slides here. All right, so just additional background information about me is I stumbled upon NSA. I had no idea what the National Security Agency was when I applied to it. I was looking for a job with my background in international studies and Spanish. My goal was to be a flight attendant and fly the Latin American flights. But unfortunately, I graduated not too long after 9/11 and the travel industry was not hiring. So I had to figure out what plan B was going to be. And so I was at a career fair in Chicago where I stumbled upon the National Security Agency as the only employer in the whole career fair that was looking for like those liberal arts and people that knew a language. So I'm like, okay, I want a job, I will apply. So I applied and they didn't really care what language we had. They were going to train us in a critical language. So I applied and got the job and started to learn Chinese, Mandarin Chinese. So I spent my first 3 years in a cross-training program learning Chinese before I transitioned over to be a language analyst, which is good. My Chinese got way better than my Spanish ever was, despite the many, many, many years of studying Spanish, but it just didn't click with me the way that Chinese did. But then as Laura mentioned earlier, I've transitioned through a bunch of language support roles at NSA. So I have over 20 years experience at NSA. My career has been focused on language things, half of it working language, and then half of it supporting language. So we can go to the next slide. And Eva already talked about this. So NSA here to talk about the signals intelligence portion of the intelligence community, where we are that passive intelligence gatherer. We are collecting foreign communications and analyzing that information. Next slide. So just general information, we are based out of Fort Meade, Maryland, which is about halfway between DC and Baltimore. So not right down in the DC area, but out in the suburbs a little bit. But we have locations all around the United States, including Georgia, Texas, Hawaii, Alaska, Utah, and Colorado. Next slide, please. So we have two main missions. Our signals intelligence mission, which is that collecting and analyzing the foreign communications to provide our policymakers and military commanders the information that they need to do their jobs. And our other side is our cybersecurity side, where we are protecting our networks, making sure our infrastructure is safe and not having anybody come into and steal our information. And to do that, we do partner with other federal organizations, US allies, private industry, and academia. Next slide, please. And if I'm talking way too fast, please slow me down. But I love questions, so I want to make sure we have time for questions. So NSA is huge. We have over 40,000 employees, and we are basically like a small city or like a college campus or something. We have jobs for almost everyone. We have our own police force, we have our own lawyers, we have our own medical professionals, we have all the STEM that you think that we probably have. And then, of course, to run the agency, we need all those business people and HR people and installation and logistics for our buildings. But then what I am here today to talk to you more about is the intelligence analysis and language analysis. With a mission of collecting foreign intelligence, languages are what we need. We wouldn't be able to do our job if we didn't have foreign language skills here. Next slide, please. So the languages, this was asked earlier, of higher, we have what we normally call our big five, which are Mandarin Chinese, Persian Farsi, Russian, Korean, and Arabic. The order that they fall in depends on what's going on in the world. So a couple of years ago, Russian was the top of that list of what we were really looking for. But anytime the world changes, any event goes on, that order could switch around. I'll say right now, I think the order that is Mandarin Chinese, Persian Farsi, Arabic, Russian, Korean, but we're always looking for those less commonly taught languages as well. And like some of the African languages or South Asian languages, anything else that might be useful is good to have, but it's even better if you have one of those less commonly taught languages and pair it with a larger language, like French with a African language would be really helpful. That way we can keep you gainfully employed if whatever we need for that smaller niche language goes away. We have another major language that we can have you work. But besides language ability, which is primary, we look for other things. We don't have a cookie cutter approach to what a language analyst is. We look for those with all different backgrounds. We like those that have intelligence studies, any of the sciences or STEM, area studies, cyber, really anything. When you think of our missions here, there's so much that if you have a chemistry background and you know another language, you know Russian, well, when you come across something that's dealing with chemical or biological weapons, you'd be able to understand that more so than somebody that is just, just learn Russian without that background. So we try to bring in a mix of people that so we can kind of cover all these different specialty areas. Because we are the passive intelligence gatherer, we do not actually test your production of the language. We don't test your speaking or writing ability. We only test your listening and reading ability. So when you take the Defense Language Proficiency Test is the test that we use, it's only testing those two skills. But the biggest thing to have when you come to work with any of the intelligence communities is that curiosity and willingness to learn. What we do here, you can't do anywhere else. You're working on topics that you don't understand in English and then trying to do them in Chinese, and you're really lost. But if you have that curiosity and willingness to learn, you will prevail and you will learn things and come up with a ton of knowledge on some very random things sometimes. But yeah, so we're looking for everything for our language. Next slide, please. So we are those passive intelligence gatherers. So we are not the James Bonds. We're not out there doing that human collection, trying to get information from other humans. We are the Sherlock Holmes of the IC. We are going through large amounts of data, trying to figure out what is important, what is not important, what is going to answer the questions that our customers are asking for us. So we sit behind the comfort and protection of our computer screens and just go through the data, either audio or written material, and just keep trying to find those clues. Next slide, please. So we call ourselves multidiscipline language analysts because you can't have anything short in the government. So MDLAs are the shortened abbreviation for that. But as a language analyst or MDLA at NSA, you don't just sit and translate all day. You are using your analytic skills and all other skills for your job. What I have shown here is what we call the SIGINT cycle, the signals intelligence cycle, that starts around your target development. What is the information that you're trying to get? What answer are we trying? What's the question that we're trying to answer? And we're going through, where can we find that information? How can we collect that foreign communication? And then when you get that, you go through the scanning phase where we gather all this information. Now you're going through it. What is reportable? What is not reportable? What can then lead you maybe to another way? And then go into the research. So maybe you found something like, oh, this is really interesting. Then you start to research. Is this already been reported by the New York Times? Or did CIA put out a report on this? Or like, what's the background of this? I don't fully understand this. Is there some other background? So you could do some research. And then you move into the translation of it. So the translation is just a piece. It is a necessary piece, but it's not the full picture of what the job is. So after the translation, then if that's enough information there, we write it into a report, and that report gets sent out to our customers. And then our customers are really good at providing feedback of the reports. If they have questions on it, they'll send you questions. They will oftentimes make note of how they used it. And it's really important to have that interaction with your customer, because we are trying to provide them the information they need to do their jobs. So the more interaction you have with them, the better our information can be that we provide to our customers. And by customers, I mean all the other intelligence community members, and like the government, military. We don't do anything based off of what we want to do. Everything that we do at NSA is levied upon us by our customers, saying we want the answer to X, Y, and Z, and SIGINT is the place to get it. Next slide, please. So I think this slide needs to be updated because I think my levels are off a little bit. But at NSA, we actually hire the lower level, probably the lowest level in the IC for language. We are willing to take people that test at the ILR level 2 in both listening and reading, and that is our minimum requirements. You must be at least a level 2 in reading and listening in order to get a position at NSA as a language analyst. But that said, some languages we do have higher demands for. So if it's something where we have a lot of supply, like for example, if we were hiring Spanish, which we don't hire a lot of, we would want that person to be at least that level 3 in Spanish, just because there's so many out there, we can be a little bit pickier on it. But if we're really searching for Chinese, or a couple of years ago when we were really searching for Russian, we'd be willing to take them at that 2 level. And then we provide the training to help get them up to the proficiency level we really want them to be, which is that level 3 or higher. With the level 3 at the ILR scale, that comes our incentive pay. So next slide, please. So that is where you get the foreign language incentive pay. So if you get a level 3 on your reading test, you get $200 every other week. A level 3 in listening is $250. And if you were to get a level 3 in both listening and reading, you get an extra $650 a week, or every other week, which comes out to be almost $17,000 a year on top of your salary and your proficiency pay. You have to be working the language in order to get that pay. If you know multiple languages and are working full-time those languages, you can get additional. So with Arabic, we will test you on modern standard Arabic, but then if you also know a dialect, you can take a dialect test as well. So if you're working, because nobody really speaks modern standard, so if you're working that dialect at a level 3, plus you have the 3 in modern standard Arabic, you can get that $650 for the modern standard and add another $250 for your dialect. So it is a nice incentive to try to get to that level 3 And we are working on even increasing this amount more. I think we pay the highest in the IC, I believe, for working the language. So next slide, please. I am cruising through here. So we offer a lot of different opportunities. NSA is one that has opportunities for, like we do have the high school work study program for local high school seniors that are studying Russian or Chinese. But we also have internships for those that are at college. So these internships take place every summer for 12 weeks. They are paid programs. All the work that you do at NSA is paid. I don't think any IC can hire you as a non-paid thing. I believe everything is paid. But our summer language program is our 12-week paid summer internship for those that are freshmen in college to those that are getting their PhD. So it's a really great preview. You get assigned to an office and you work right alongside of the permanent employees, and you are working the same stuff as them. And it's not just a job where you're making copies or getting coffee for people. It's you're actually doing the work of a language analyst. And some of my language analysts that have been here for the summer have worked on things that made it into the president's daily briefings. So it's not given low priority work. They are doing stuff that is important. Because of the processing requirements, the jobs for this student program internships are only open September 1st to October 1st. Because for the following summer, because it takes a while to get that clearance through. All right, next slide. We also have the cooperative education program, which is for college sophomores or second semester freshmen. And this is a program where students will alternate semesters working at NSA and semesters back in college. This program is the only student program that actually opens twice a year. It'll open and it stays open longer. So it's open September and October, and then also February and March. And this one comes with a couple extra incentives, like a little bit of reimbursement for your tuition when you're back at school those semesters. And we fly you back for everything. And that's the same with the language testing. When we require the language testing from you, we will fly you out, put you in a hotel if you're not local, and pay for all that. The only thing that you're out for processing with us is your time to come out. For French, we don't hire a lot of just French applicants. If we are to hire French, we normally hire it as a grouping with either one of those less commonly taught languages or with like a combination of Spanish and Portuguese or some other combination of multi-languages, like multi-Romance languages, just because we're not sure how much we'll need of which language. We again want to keep you gainfully employed. So we look for combinations. You become a lot more attractive in your resume if you have more than just straight Spanish or straight French, if you have it paired with some other languages. But for French, we would want you at the 3-3 level. For any of like the Romance European languages, we would want at the 3-3 level. Okay, next slide. And then we have our development programs. So ignore the fact that it seems like an internship. These are actually just for entry-level positions or even mid-career programs. If what we do at NSA is different and you're trying to learn all these different types of tools and how SIGINT works and processes. So we have all these programs that start you into a 3-year program where you rotate to different offices, learn and taking different courses and just really learning the job and increasing your language. So it is not a bad thing to be hired into a development program. And in fact, you want to be hired into the development program because of the opportunities that it provides. Even those that do career changes, like mid-life career changes, they will come into the development program. There's not an age limit. It doesn't have to be like just college graduates. And it's just really great because there are so many different offices and topics that you can work at NSA. Like for Chinese, there's a ton, and you get to do about 5 different offices. And I had to get kicked out of the program because I love the fact that you can go and spend like 6 months learning something and then go spend 6 months in another office, focus on something completely different and try all these different types of different topics. So it's really great to be able to network as well and bring your skills to other places. And next slide, please. So like Ava's slide here, the benefits beyond the mission. So are these educational incentives available only after job offers? So any of, well, the ones that Eva posted are before, but any of the training that we do, that is all after you are hired. So we do have we have our own school, the National Cryptologic University, now is an accredited university where we provide a lot of our training and language training and other types of training that's useful for NSA. But it's not just job training. NSA really invests in its people, and we want you to be the best employee that you can be. So if that means you really want to take leadership classes or communication classes, you have that available to you. There's lots of different development programs that are like career development programs that are outside of those entry level starting programs that you can join to grow all your skills as an employee. And if you're a person like me that just loves to learn all different things, then NSA is definitely the place for you because you will never stop learning at NSA. And I think that's almost it. Next slide, please. So I've mentioned the same requirements for all of our jobs require the top secret SCI security clearance. So that includes the background investigation, a full scope polygraph, and a psychological evaluation. So that can take a while. Everybody's background is different to them. Some people can go through that a lot quicker than others. It just is a very individual experience. And the biggest thing I can stress for this is when you're filling out your paperwork and you're talking to people, just tell the truth. We want to trust you with classified information. And if you try hiding information, that does not look good. So no matter how bad you think something or how minor you think something, but if it keeps coming up in your head while you're doing the polygraph, just let the polygrapher know, and it helps to get it off your mind and give you a better chance of clearing. If you hid something a little bit minor through the whole process and then it's finally like revealed later on in the process, then they factor, you had this opportunity to mention this, you had this opportunity to mention this, you had this opportunity to mention it, and you never did. So we don't think you're trustworthy enough. So my biggest tip is just be completely truthful in all your paperwork. Next slide, please. So I cruised through that to leave a lot of time for questions here. My contact information is there, the language at uwe.nsa.gov if you have further questions. But yeah, let's hear your questions. Amy.
Hi, Jenny. Thank you so much for sharing all this information. This is very appealing to me. And I like the fact that you can go back and forth and learn different languages. So you answered one of my questions as you were finishing, but another one that I had posted is there a way to go through a practice test on your website? And this goes for Eva as well. Is there a way for anyone to use a practice test in the website? Yes. Or otherwise?
Yeah, I put the link into the chat for that one. There's the DLPT relevant information and guides. So we use the Defense Language Proficiency Test at NSA, which is the same as the Department of Defense. So on the Defense Language Institute Foreign Language Center's, DLI FLC's website, they have familiarization guides, and they're really helpful. And they have it just a generic so you can understand how the test works. And then they have ones that are language specific that give you a really good idea. And they'll say, like, here's a level 2 question, a written question or article there, and then the questions, and you can kind of gauge, okay, well, I think this is the answer. And then they tell you the answer and why it's that answer versus some of the other ones. So it's a really good thing to do and go to, because with that test, sometimes it's a little bit more like SAT, ACT type test where there could almost be 2 right answers. So you want to make sure you're really getting the most correct answer, especially as you get to the higher levels in the test. They get a little bit trickier.
Okay, so
Where-
my Duolingo certification will not apply, not just
Yeah. If you've completed it, you're probably
I
okay.
completed it, and I even them there was some mistakes that they made. It was like, you cannot. This is like what Eva was talking about, the difference, the AI translating the language. It's like I had experience doing some voiceover for some movies back in the days, and it's the same thing. It does not translate the emotion and the feeling of the tone that is trying to be expressed. So that being said, my second question is, what is the level of French at this point of that time with NSA?
So we would want you at least the level 3 in both listening and reading. But as I mentioned before, it's not going to be as competitive unless there's another language. So if you have your Arabic with it, that is definitely more competitive for that.
And last question, and then I'll pass it on to everybody else who I'm sure wanted to ask questions. Number 3 is, when you get hired, whether it's with NSA or with the intelligence community with Eva, do you have people moving for training? I live in Miami. You don't have an office in Miami that I know of. So would that mean for me, if say you hire me, would you have me train for the 12 weeks elsewhere, or how does that work?
So because none of the ICs really do telework, especially for language work, if you're working with classified information, you would have to move to one of our locations. And as long as you're outside of a 60 or 90-mile radius of a location, they'll move you and pay for the relocation incentives.
So, and it wouldn't be temporary, it would be
permanent.
Okay, thank you.
But then once you're in, like, there are opportunities to go elsewhere. So as I showed the map, like, I'm at Fort Meade right now. If I wanted to go to Hawaii, I could try to get a job in Hawaii and move there. And like, Hawaii you have to know Chinese or Korean to get to Hawaii. But and then we have some locations overseas as well that we don't disclose, but those are competitive to get overseas locations as well. So you can move around or you can stay in one site. Like, I spent my whole 20 years at Fort Meade, but there are others that go 3 years, hop overseas for a bunch of consecutive tours, or hop over to all of our different sites. So it's really how it works for you and your family.
I'm open to that. So thank you for answering my question.
And then I wanted to actually touch back on, I had wrote a note for the artificial intelligence, the AI in government, and will it replace humans? Like I said, like, no, it's not going to replace humans. There's something, especially for us, we get all this communication, all this foreign communication. You can really get a good feeling on a topic or person by seeing all the material. So you can get that tone and that sarcasticness or the jokes to it, where AI can't do that. But what we are working on is being able to use AI to help bring up that important information, highlight that important information, so that we are spending our time working on the things that matter versus the trying to find all that information. Like, digital age now, communications are flying all over the place. So we're getting a lot of information and we need help going through it. So how can we use AI to help train some models to bring up what do you think is going to be important and provide that answer to our customers? So we're really trying to work with it, but it will never replace us at the high level. And Sahara.
Yes, thank you so much, Amy, for asking those questions, as well as everyone else in the comments, Jenny and Eva. I was wondering if there's an opportunity to connect with either of you or any additional specialists for mentorship or advice as I move forward with my application process.
Yeah, I have my email address there, sure. And I'll put it again in chat. I can help you towards the NSA version, but I've worked a lot with all the other ICs and know I have no problems guiding people to what IC agency I think that they're going to be the best fit for, because there are definitely people that are like, I love speaking the language and I want to speak the language and I'm not scared to be, recruiting assets or anything. And then CIA, by all means, go that way, or DIA. But if you're like me, I'm like, I like to know the language. I'm never all that comfortable speaking the language. Then NSA was the perfect fit for me because I love to be able to listen to it and read it. But that's where I don't need to have the conversations as much about it.
Yeah, I definitely understand.
But yeah, I could help steer you towards some places. And I will say, so I'm going to put our job, NSA hires off of our own website. We use the Intelligence Careers website. And so occasionally you'll see NSA jobs on USA Jobs, but that is like some of our harder to fill jobs. You want to go to our Intelligence Careers. We don't have any language positions listed right now. We are hoping to get a language position probably in January, sometime posted. The other thing I forgot to mention is that intelligence analysis position, which is very similar to the language analyst position, and they really like people that have language skills, but it's not as concerned about what language is it or how high of a level, just the fact that you will be working with foreign intelligence, so being used to intelligence. So if you only have a French, that could be a good pair to go with the intelligence analyst position, because you could be working, they're not as much tied to a region. Like if I'm a Chinese language analyst, I'm going to be working a Chinese mission, a China mission of some sort. As an intelligence analyst, you could work a China mission, you could work an Arabic mission, you could work a Russian mission, you could swap around and do whatever one. But if you have that French, you could do a lot of that Middle East, Africa, or even if there's a European something where they're using French. So they're keep an eye out for that one. I think they just had an experienced one out, but the intelligence analysis development program might be posted probably in the springtime. It's usually only posted twice a year for that one. And somebody asked if there's an age limit. There is no age limit. So there are some age limits for some jobs and other ICs, or to be FBI special agent or anything like that. But at NSA, we do not have an age limit. You can come at any time. And when I was associate director for our development program, I had a new hire that started in his 60s. So he was a transfer from DIA and moved over to us. So you can start at any age and start a career here, and we give you the training. As long as you have that curiosity and willingness to learn and try, we will hire you. Yes, Amy, another question.
Amy, I think you're muted.
Sorry about that. And sorry for asking so many questions. I love questions. So thank you, Amy.
I love questions too.
So I want to start, since a child, that the stupidest question is the one you don't ask. So I go with that since. I have looked into us.gov for language analysis. And I have been challenged with the fact that FBI was looking for, but to be a special agent, there was indeed an age limitation. The second challenge was the clearance. So how are you able to reach out to the agent posting that if you are interested, how do you go around, or how do you go to express your interest in those positions when you don't have the clearance yet?
So we don't, all of us will do the clearance process for you. So if you're selected, we will do the clearance process for you.
Gotcha. Okay.
In fact, we don't even really take each other's clearances in the IC. Everybody has some things that they do their own style, and they want it their own style. So you don't have to have anything. You don't have to have test scores of any kind. It's all, as long as you can show your ability and get selected to process, that's when we then will bring you in for processing. I will say CIA does their hiring a little different. They, I think, keep their jobs like you express interest in a position for them. And then if they find you a right fit, then they reach out to you and tell you to apply to a certain like hidden position that they give you, where we just post when we have the jobs opening for us. But it's just, you got to just keep trying, is the big thing. And then think about what, like, how you want to use your, like, if you're going off of your language skills, then talking about you have cultural expertise, or you have translation or interpretation experience, or you have some other background with you. It's really good to highlight all of those skills as well that you can bring and gear towards, even better if you gear it towards national security, or like that,
Okay.
you know, you're aware of the situation or that. And
Got you. You have mentioned earlier about Sherlock Holmes, and it's funny because I was smiling when I saw that. You also mentioned analysis, looking for patterns. This is what you're looking for. I would like to combine. I just did a RICO training, so I got a certification for, and I started a new career as a PI, and I'd like to combine the language and the private investigation knowledge. Is there any opportunity for?
so it really depends on what topic you work. There are some there, we have like counterintelligence topics that we work. So there's, you know, that office, if you can get into that office and work types like that. But it's like anything that deals with national security. You got the government type stuff, military,
Okay.
economics, like, yeah, politics, scientific, like all these different topics. So you normally can find something that really interests you. We always say, like at NSA, if you're bored, it's your own fault, because there's so many different opportunities that we have here that you can either change your career, just switch to a different office and do something a little different. So there's tons of different opportunities to find what you like to do.
Thank you.
And I will say, like, if you wanted, it wouldn't probably be using your language, but we do have that security and counterintelligence department here too, that does the background investigations, does the analyzing. Instead of analyzing foreign intelligence, they are analyzing our personnel information. So is this person worth giving a clearance? Is this person should no longer have a clearance? Like, is there anything in this financial data that causes red flags? So you're going through a bunch of this other information on people and making those decisions, kind of the clearance decisions. And it seems like an actual really interesting job. And then sometimes it's just getting your foot in the door. If you're wanting some way, like we have over like 1,000 internal vacancies at any given time. So sometimes, you know, if you get in and you might discover you love what you got in at, and that's great. And that's what we hope happens. But maybe you get in and you're like, this isn't what I thought. You spend your probation time, which is usually like a 2-year commitment or so to it. And then you look and see if you have the skills to qualify for another job internally.
Okay, thank you. Seems that the sky is the limit.
Yeah,
Thank you again.
you're welcome. So somebody asked if you had a clearance in the past, is there a reason to mention the forms? I say yes. I think it's helpful to see that people have had a clearance, and that you held it. It might make it more likely to think, okay, maybe if we need somebody really quick, oh, you had a clearance in the past, hopefully you'll clear again. But it won't necessarily speed things up unless it's more recent. So if you've had a more recent clearance through a contractor company or military or anything like that, if there was a recent background investigation, they can take a lot of that information, but we'll always do our own like polygraph and psychological exam. But I think it's worth to mention. I would say it does not hurt to mention.
So I think we had another question further back in the chat. Do you have to be a citizen to go through the background check? Would a green card be eligible for the internships and jobs you mentioned?
Thanks for I missed that one. You do have to be a US citizen, but for NSA at least, there is no wait time. So you could get your US citizenship today and apply for NSA tomorrow. So there isn't any requirement that you have to have it for a certain amount of time. Background investigation could take longer if you have a lot of foreign national associations or haven't lived here that long. You must live in the United States the majority of the last 5 years. So kind of like the last 3 out of 5 years be living in the United States. But otherwise you do have to have US citizenship. You can be a double citizen or a dual citizen. Security will talk to you about that and will make the call on whether that's okay or not. And I always tell people, don't do anything with your other citizenship until you talk to security. Like there's no reason to like give up citizenship if you don't have to give it up. But sometimes they might ask you need to give up your other citizenship for a job opportunity. And that's then up to you to decide whether you want to do that or not. But it is not a disqualifying factor to be a dual citizen. Can ask anything about me, my career. It was very interesting. Me and Eva are very opposite of kind of how we got here, and except for the fact that we both have Chicago as our tie-in. I got the job in Chicago. She went to Chicago. So question of rate of applicants who are second career and accepted. There's a lot. We have a wide variety. That's why I like to stress that there is no cookie cutter approach to the people that we hire. If you got the skills and the ability, like we will hire you. That's great to have like second career people because often have so much more background knowledge that you come with. Of course, like we spend the majority of our time recruiting on college campuses just because that's an easy place to reach a bunch of people that are looking for a job. But yeah, we love all different types of people. And we do also hire language instructors. It's not as often though that we do that, but there you might see a language instructor job as well if teaching is your thing. But that's the nice thing of being a language analyst at NSA. I'm going way off on a tangent here, sorry about that. Is that you do your language analyst job. And if there's something that interests you, you can really dive into that more. So if your passion is always teaching, you can, but you like the language analyst job too, you can do the language analyst job and you can become an adjunct faculty member and teach a couple of language courses a year or run your own directed studies or curriculum that trains like analysts. We love people that give back to others. So that's something. If technology is your thing or AI is your thing, you can get involved with working with the AI models and or like some of our tools and really become like a tools champion. So it's you kind of you do the job, but then you make it fit your interests. So you can develop, like, my thing was always working more with people. So I started working with our summer interns while still as a language analyst, and then eventually worked my way into just doing that as a job. But we like to foster that. We like to foster what you're interested in to go along with that language job. Amy.
Hi, I'm sorry again, but I want to know. So I have a lot of questions. So, we understood from Eva that her experience, her most cultural shock experience was with America, which I agree because it was the same thing with me coming from Europe. But what about yours?
You know, that was funny because when you asked her that, I'm like, ooh, I don't know. I will say my thing is, like, when I went to China and spoke Chinese to, I just said like ni hao. And like media got back like, oh, wow, your Chinese is so good. It's amazing. And then I just think of how back in the United States, if we have somebody who is a non-English speaker and they say like hello, and it's really like accented, we do not have that same
Reaction.
look at it. Yeah, reaction to it. It's the like, why don't you speak English? Where it's just so great that, you know, like some of these, they just love the fact that you try to speak the language and that is okay with them. Like, why are we so bad here with like, everyone must speak English, but it's not, it was like, I just said hello and you think that's great. That was kind of like a shock for me.
And you travel in many countries, I'm assuming. Which one, besides China, since you have the reaction that you mentioned, which one was harder to adjust to because of the cultural shock?
I would go back to with China as well, because it was so busy and just, I wasn't, I'm from the Midwest. I wasn't used to all these people around and different customs and the smoking, the spitting, the all this,
Oh,
like
yeah.
as you're walking the streets, and then when it rained, it was like covered your like bag with mud because the air was so polluted, so you couldn't see the building outside of your classroom window across the 100 feet away from you because of the pollution would be so bad in the sky, and then it rains and it's like basically raining mud because of how dirty the air was. But also was the most intriguing, and I love the fact of how different it is than the United States too.
Okay. And in what country was your longest experience beside China?
Spain.
Oh,
I spent 5 months in Spain.
was it a good experience or?
Yeah, but just my Spanish was really bad.
Okay. All right. So,
But that was more, it's more similar to the United States in a way, like just like culture, customs.
okay, one more. And I'll try to pass it on again. And if anybody has a question, feel free to like cut me off and all, because I can go on for.
We have one hand up.
Yeah, right. I'll be like this. So when you're traveling and doing part of the program, you mentioned earlier that you did the program for so long that they kicked you out because you were doing that so long. How many times and where were the places that you were able to do during that program?
So when we do our development programs, we always say like you do different tours, but it's really just moving from office to office at the same location. So we have expanded though, like our campus now here at Fort Meade is pretty big and we have a few different sets of buildings around the area. So it might be, a half mile away from, but it's all generally in the same area. So depending on what language, like some languages we have, a ton of different options. Some languages that are smaller, there isn't as much that we're interested in. You might only have a few different topics, but it's really just going from office to office. You spend a year in your first office that gets assigned to you. And then after that, you rotate every 6 months up to 4 additional offices.
Within that office. So it's not like you're going to Anchorage for 6 months and Hawaii.
No.
Okay, gotcha.
So there is an opportunity, depending on funding, which has been harder these days, to have one diversity or external tour as part of your development program. So with that, like people would go to Hawaii for 6 months as their, or Alaska or something. But like I said, that's very competitive based on funding. But there's also the opportunity to go work down at CIA or FBI or DIA for 6 months as well with them. And we have a lot of people that do that because it doesn't cost funding. You just have to be willing to drive the Beltway to get to those locations. But you would stay still in your home and just go that way. Or you do a diversity tour, and I did a diversity tour where I did something that was not language involved as well, to just see like a different side of NSA. So it's one of either that external or diversity that you can do with that. But yes, it's there's so many options. It was really hard to just pick, but that's the time where you can try something new, because it's only 6 months that you have to deal with it if you picked wrong, which did happen to me once, where I'm like, I know I will do my 6 months, but I am not coming back to this office because it was way over my head. But then there are other ones like, oh, I love this. I wish I could stay longer than 6 months. I'm just getting in the groove now. But yeah, it's really great. But yeah, when we say like rotations, it's really just, sometimes even it's in the same office. Like I've held 3 different jobs within 3 different organizations, but it's been the same big room. I just moved seats from one place to another.
The blue room versus the gray room.
Yeah, this end of the hallway versus that end of the hallway, this floor versus that floor. Yeah.
And regarding those who went to Hawaii or Anchorage, was housing provided?
Yes, if you are
Per diem?
on a TBY, the short-term thing, and that's why it's so expensive. So that's why there's not a lot of money for that. We also have our foreign partners that people have done tours with. Our foreign partners are close allies are the other English-speaking countries, Canada, New Zealand, Australia, and in the Great Britain. So we potentially have opportunities to work with them as well. So it's a very collaborative environment. We work very well with all different agencies and groups of people.
Including Interpol?
I don't know about that one.
Okay.
More of just the IC agencies.
Okay. Thank you everyone for your patience as well.
Dina, you've had your hand up.
Hi, good afternoon, and thank you so much for having this talk. It's been incredibly informative. Silly question. If we're somebody who just loves to learn languages, we already have maybe requisite languages that your agency might need, but we also show interest in like multiple other languages. Would that be like welcome? I know that you talked about your experience and jumping into Chinese after knowing Spanish, but let's say the agency has a need for speakers who know this lesser available language. There are opportunities to train us in that language while also, I guess, speaking in the target language that you hired us for. Are those opportunities available?
Yeah, they come and go. So we just are wrapping up a big cross-training initiative that we did when we were really looking for Chinese and Russian. So we had it going for a couple of years where we're doing the same as how I came in, was hired with no language background in Chinese at all and trained into that. And then we were also doing enhancing if people just had like a lower level to put them into a shorter class. But then there are times where something comes up and We need another language to go with one of the languages, or like, the Arabic dialects. There's often dialect training where you can pick up new dialects, or you're learning a South Asian language. A lot of those are related, but you need another one to really do the job better, that we train you in that. We partner a lot, or make use of the Foreign Service Institute training, or the language training through the IC too. But it depends on the need and what we have available. For NSA, we typically don't send people overseas to learn a language. We do it all kind of in-house or around the area, like using the other IC elements to help with training. Back in the day, we used to send people, but then as security and all that factored in more, we stopped sending people overseas. But then, everything depends on funding. So there might be like a Middlebury summer that you could go to, but those are really expensive. So it depends on funding for that as well.
What's a Middlebury summer?
So Middlebury has really good summer institutes of language. They're very intensive. They have language pledges. So it's kind of like the prime language camp. So I think it's like 6 weeks or so long, but it's like intensive, full-time, speaking the language, living the language, taking language training. I think for college students, you get like 2 semesters of college credit for the language in that summer time frame. So they're known for just being so immersive, as a really good domestic immersion program. There's other ones too, like Concordia Language Villages in Minnesota. Arizona State University does critical language institutes. University of Wisconsin-Madison does some critical language institutes in the summer. There are a lot of different summer institute programs if you're able to take them, but Middlebury is a residential, so you must live there and you live by the pledge, where some of the other ones are just you go for the day and then you leave. But yeah, so I didn't really fully answer. It all depends. Everything depends on what goes on in the world. And that's the hardest thing, especially with hiring for the IC and for language. It's easy to hire for STEM. A STEM person can work on a Russia topic and then the next day work on a Chinese topic and then work on an Arabic topic. Their work really doesn't change by the language, where you can't just take an Arabic linguist and be like, hey, we need you tomorrow to be a Chinese language analyst. And so when events happen in the world, we hope we're on top of it, but that, something pops up and we have that need, then all of a sudden we're looking for people that either have that skill or are willing to train in that skill. So it really depends. And if anybody on here has Spanish, I know Spanish comes up a lot. NSA doesn't hire a lot for Spanish, but a lot of the other ICs do. That's one of their top languages. So FBI, CIA, those are definitely ones that are more into hiring Spanish than NSA.
Thank you, Jenny.
You're welcome. I know we're over time here, but
Yeah, I think there's
I love
just
questions. So
one more question in the chat, and then I know we are quite a bit over time, and I want to be respectful of everyone's schedules. So it's our last question will be, does NSA also partner with private business entities besides educational institutions?
Yes. And that's about all I know about that. But yeah, I know they do work and partner with private businesses on things, especially more so, or I think towards that cybersecurity side, protecting networks and things like that. The more technical stuff that is not in my realm, but we definitely do.
Okay, great. Well, again, we are a bit over our time, so I think we will need to go ahead and wrap up here. But thank you so much, Eva and Jenny, for your incredible presentations and your expertise. We're really grateful for your generous donation of your time today to share that expertise with our National Museum of Language community.
Thank you for having us. This was wonderful.
Thank you
So-
very much. It was great experience.
Emily, I wanted to thank you for creating this. That this was amazing. I had no idea, and now I'm even more eager to find out. So thank you for making this happen. Thank you, Eva, for all the information, and thank you, Jenny, for all the question answered.
I want to certainly give credit to Greg Nedved, who is our former NML president, who manages our speaker programs, and Laura Murray, our president, who is a retired alumni of the federal government language community and has all of the connections to put this type of program together. So they really get the credit. I'm just the producer keeping the tech going. But I suppose it takes everyone's contributions to make it happen. So
Without you, it couldn't happen. So
That's what I was saying.
but again, we'll go ahead
it's like
and
the second cycle. You need every single piece of it to work together.
Right.
You need the tech with the language.
Like,
but
Eva was saying, you booklet the booklet.
so we'll go ahead and stop the